So I thought I would share a few minutes on the wisdom of shame and self-blame. The wisdom of shame and self-blame. Because so often on the healing path, we begin to identify these patterns of toxic shame, this deep-seated feeling of, I am wrong, I am bad, I did something wrong, it's my fault, there is something wrong with me. Toxic shame. Self-blame. It's me, right? And then seek to end that pattern. Naturally, these are not patterns that we want to stay trapped in long term, but what we resist persists. So as we begin to identify that these are perhaps unhealthy patterns based on painful past learning that we are stuck in, we then just try not to do them or not to get swept into them. Or what also commonly happens is that we become ashamed of the shame, right? The shame rises or the self-blame rises, and we then feel that that's something we shouldn't be feeling because that's a wrong behavior or wrong emotion, or it's not healthy. and that then becomes another prison, another loop. We become ashamed of the shame. And what we resist persists. It just grows. It doesn't actually go away. We just end up kind of at war with ourselves. And so a different approach is to seek to understand the wisdom of these protective mechanisms, because that's what they are. They're protective mechanisms. They are adaptions. They are very, very clever, wise and clever ways that we learned to feel safe when we were younger. So, in brief, I want to invite you to think about what shame does somatically, right? So, in contrast to an experience like anger or frustration or hurt, you have hurt me, right? So I just want to be mindful here that I'm going to go gently, but I hope none of what I'm about to do with my body is too triggering for anyone, because very small things can trigger memories for us. So I'm just going to take a mildly aggressive, a warning for you, I'm going to take a mildly aggressive kind of forward posture, okay? So when we're sort of angry, right? You are to blame. You have hurt me, yeah? It's your fault. It's this forward energy. And that anger and that frustration and that you are the problem. You have hurt me, right? I don't like you right now. Those are all energies and emotions that for most of us, a lot of us, a very large percentage, our caregivers weren't capable of handling because they didn't have a comfortable relationship with their own inner world. They didn't have a comfortable relationship with our inner world and with our more challenging emotions, right? Somebody's relationship to their own challenging emotions is how they also relate to others' challenging emotions. So if our caregivers weren't comfortable with receiving that, if they couldn't hold it, and they also couldn't be accountable for how they caused directly feelings of hurt, anger, frustration, right? If they couldn't take authentic accountability, which is very different from being a martyr, right? Oh, I know I'm a terrible mother, and I'm no good, and I've failed you in so many ways. That's not accountability. If they couldn't be genuinely accountable, I'm so sorry that I've hurt you. Of course you're feeling angry. Of course you're feeling frustrated. I haven't been here. I haven't been holding you. I haven't been showing up, right? Of course you feel angry and alone. I'm here with you now. If they couldn't do that, then our anger and frustration and all these things that we felt, if we couldn't express them in a forward-moving way and have them held and received, then bringing them to the table would have risked rupture in the relationship. And as a child, maintaining connection, maintaining what we call the attachment bond with your caregiver is vital. Our survival depends on it as human mammals, right? As it's part of our evolutionary development that we require that attachment bond to survive, because we need the nurturing and care of those adult caregivers. So we are biologically primed and wired to try to retain that connection with them. So if they cannot receive this part of us, if we intuitively, naturally know that they can't handle this side of us, this part of us, then we will deny that authentic self, right? Attachment will always override authenticity as a priority, right? And that has long-term repercussions in our lives. We will continue as adults to sacrifice our authenticity in exchange for the feeling of attachment with those around us. This is what we call codependency. This is what we call a fawn response. Anyway, so if that forward motion, that frustration, that anger can't be received, then the only alternative is to say, oh, no, you're not to blame. It's me. You're right. It is me. I'm behaving badly. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Right? It's me. Yes? It's me. Small, to go backward. Shame is a backward hiding motion. For those that understand polyvagal theory in the nervous system, shame is a position of collapse. It's what happens when we're in a situation and we can't fight. We're not allowed to fight back and say, no, this isn't okay with me. This is wrong. When your no is not received, when your no is not heard. And you also can't leave. You can't run. You can't escape because you're a kid and there's nowhere to go. We will instead go into the third adaptive mechanism, survival response, which is to collapse, is to freeze, is to go into shame. It's me, I'm sorry, I'll be small again. I won't confront you. I won't try to hold you accountable. It is my fault. Huh? So it's very clever, because in doing that, in turning the blame in on ourselves, we then retain the bond. It's a way that we smooth the connection and keep the connection alive. It's a way of taking our power back. Because if we ask someone to be responsible for the way they are harming us, to be accountable for their actions and their own behavior, and they aren't capable of doing that, that lives us in no man's land. That lives us in the abyss of emotional isolation, where there is discord and rupture and no way to repair it. And that's very frightening. So if this person over here cannot be accountable, right, cannot accept responsibility for the way that they impact us, then the only way to retain that bond and retain that connection and repair that rupture is to say, don't worry, it's my fault. It was me. It was me. Right? So that's the way to take our power back. It's a way to feel like, it's a way to feel that we have the ability to repair the connection, and it's a way to protect us against that emotional isolation. So there's incredible wisdom in shame and self-blame, and I would, if any of this resonates with you, I would encourage you to really consider how prevalent this pattern may be in your life. For me, for example, it's a very deeply etched groove, neural pathway, karmic pathway. And although in many ways it's been loosened over the years, that trauma pattern will co-opt even my healing behaviors, healing tools. I am very good at self-regulating. I'm very good at self-examining. I'm very good at taking accountability for what's mine. And what that means is that the trauma can sneak in the back door. And even when I use these healthy tools of self-regulation, self-examination, of being emotionally accountable, I can still be the one in my life and relationships who is taking excessive accountability, who is taking more responsibility than the other to maintain the connection and repair the bond. And that very much echoes into my history. That's an echo of my history. So for me, I have to be watchful of yes, self-examining, yes, self-regulating, yes, being accountable, yes, in the right way, in the right space, looking to sustain healthy, balanced connections and relationships in my life. Relationships are important, right? But I also have to be cautious not to continue to place excessive burden on myself to be the one to do that. I have to be mindful to maintain balance in to what degree I do that. Yeah? To what degree I do that. So shame and blame have incredible wisdom. Right? They have incredible wisdom. They protected us. They have protected us. They will sometimes continue to try to protect us, to endeavor to protect us, to keep us safe and help us maintain the bonds in our life that matter. And that's important to realize, because when shame and self-blame arise, and we can understand the inherent wisdom that is embodied within them, what they're trying to do, our experience of them becomes very, very different. And we become able to work with that inner experience in a much more productive way. We don't have to feel ashamed of our shame. We can understand what it's trying to do for us and why. We can hold it tenderly, and then potentially seek to make another choice, realizing that the fact that we had to compromise our integrity as children, that we had to repress our authenticity, silence our needs as children to maintain those bonds and connections, it doesn't mean that that has to be something we continue to do as adults.